We are now talking to JetsInsider.com editor-in-chief, Chris Nimbley. What's going on, Mr. Nimbley? What's going on, Chris? How are you, man?
Not too much. A little bit of a mess over here, and I haven't been using the internet much, so it kind of crapped out as soon as I needed to.
Anyways, just so everybody knows, we are talking to JetsInsider.com editor-in-chief, Chris Nimbley. We were looking to talk to him after the Jets' wonderful draft and what they've done so far in this offseason. So why don't we get to it? Chris, what were your thoughts of Sauce Gardner going 4, Garrett Wilson going 10, and then the Jets trading up back into the first round at 26 to get Jermaine Johnson? 3, the triple five, what do they call it, the trifecta? Mm-hmm. What do you think of the Jets and their first round?
You can't really argue with the positions of need that they got there. There's a lot of talk about with Saleh's system, and they didn't need the top flight guy. And they do kind of have that theory, but they make exceptions for certain players. If they will make exceptions for an elite guy. They will not turn that down, and they think this kid has all the traits to be elite physically, and they just fell in love with him. Personality, from a mental standpoint, just the kid himself. They just couldn't have asked for a cleaner prospect there. So that was a no-brainer for them. And then they still were sitting there thinking about Jermaine Johnson at 10 and kind of going back and forth, but they opted to say, we need to get Zach Wilson some more help. So they went to lean there, and they went with Wilson. I probably would have waited a little bit personally, but I get their thought there, because going for Wilson, they wanted a guy with the best release, best beat press man coverage. That's what they wanted in the offense to go with Zach Wilson. So they got that. And then Joe Douglas did what he does, and he played the board. He waited, and then he waited. He called teams up asking, okay, and then he waited until somebody came with an offer like that. He's like, okay, that's worth it. I will trade up for Jermaine Johnson. So he got 2 huge needs on defense and got Zach Wilson another target. And in the first round, that's pretty good. Pretty good. Ideally, you'd like a little more help on offense, but you can't nitpick too much there.
So what do you think about the day 2 draft picks? A lot was made about how the Jets got a great value with Breece Hall and Jeremy Ruckert as well, and even some of the later ones trading up and getting great value there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I am a believer in analytics and all this, so you do have some of the analytics crowd that is criticizing it because the trades, because you're giving up a 5th round value equivalent, and I thought that just kind of absurd. Like, we're talking about the equivalent of a 5th round draft pick. You can give that up, especially in a weak draft class. Go ahead and package those late round picks up for higher picks. I have no problem with that. And I'm generally a believer in the wait to get a running back crowd too. But I think around the early 2nd round is where you want to get those guys sometimes. And they did that last year with Michael Carter. They waited and they said, okay, we got Michael Carter. Now they have Michael Carter, a very specific type of running back. So you can't just wait on any running. You don't want a Michael Carter clone. So they get Breece Hall, who's like who could be a 30-touch a guy game, who's the explosive downhill power guy that they need, but he can also be a receiving back. He can do it all. So, like, I have no problem going and being like, all right, this is a little richer than we would normally like to spend on the running back, but let's do it here. The Rucker pick, they signed the 2 tight ends this offseason, so they don't have to need anything big out of him right away, which is just huge for a tight end. They usually take a little bit to develop. There's somebody that, in this system that don't want to throw out the George Kittle comparison. I'm not going to say he's going to be anywhere near that good, but they would like to use him in a similar vein. Have him in a similar type of role that to develop. If he could be 60% of what George Kittle was, at his best, that would be great. They would love that. Max Mitchell, the extra swing tackle they would like to develop. That's around where you want to take those swings. Joe Douglas couldn't resist, getting himself at least one big guy on the offensive line. So he did a really good job of looking through blending needs with value and playing the board. And as long as I've been covering this team, I've never seen a draft and everything just executed so competently. And now it's a low bar we're talking about with the Jets here, but I haven't seen it.
You were saying that this was a competent draft, and I was talking about it. Like I remember the time when Mike McCagnon was there, and he was all over the place. He the way he drafted, a lot of Jet fans were just like, "Why would you draft him in a later round? You had this guy open. You could have gotten this guy." And for years, the Jets had just after the first or even the second round. And by the way, the Jets are one of the worst teams when it comes to drafting in the second round. So they have not been very good drafting in the second round. So why don't we get into, this offseason, even in free agency? You brought in Tomlinson. You brought in all these different pieces to help Zach Wilson. We heard Zach Wilson put on about 8 or 9 pounds of muscle. He's been training all offseason. He broke up with his girlfriend before the season was over. A lot of people were questioning why that happened and all that other stuff. Maybe because she was getting in the way of his development. Who knows? We don't know. When you look at this team, I believe – if this team, it don't matter how great of the players that they have and what kind of draft they have, everything is going to roll on Zach Wilson's arm. What are your thoughts so far of what you've heard and what you've seen so far in training camp right now to say that Zach Wilson's going to take a leap?
Yeah, well, this is the trend. This is what teams are doing with all around with the young quarterbacks. I refer to it as building them training wheels. It's what the Dolphins are doing with Tua, Tyreek Hill, what the Bills did with Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen. You make the offense around the quarterback so good that if the offense can't succeed, it's the quarterback that's the problem. That's what the Jets are essentially trying to do right here. They start OTAs coming up on Tuesday, so we'll get the first little crack at them with the new look. Everything else has been off. You just have to rely on what players are saying and telling you. And I have definitely heard the stories through the Jets West camp of Sanchez about how different he looks there, and I've heard it with Darnold and all these other guys. So I hesitate to put too much stock in it. But these players, just from last year, these players believe in Zach in a way that I don't think I've seen anybody other quarterback believed in. There was a little bit with Sanchez in that those early years, but that was more and like, okay, we trust you to kind of drive the bus of this team, how we're set up. But they kind of knew the limitations there. These players really do believe in Zach, just mentally as their leader and as a player. So we'll see. Last year he was a little more built and thick than I expected coming in. So you can see now he's a little bit more just in the pics and videos. You can see a little bit of that. I expect that'll help him a lot. But I think just mentally, he's probably going to come in just at more settled pace. It's just everything you could tell, even just by watching. Obviously, he didn't play great down the stretch or anything, but you could see how much everything slowed down. He wasn't making the disaster mistakes. So I think if he can come in just a little settled already, like, all right, the rushed part of this is behind me, that he can at least be, decent. Like, that's the thing. I think he's got a good shot to be at least decent to good. How good can he be to good to great? That's where I have my questions.
Being that they brought in the 2 tight ends, especially, you've seen the 49ers, even with Kittle banged up at certain points in his career, do a lot of the 2 tight end sets, and sometimes they maneuver Kyle Juszczyk into that kind of role. Now they bring that offense to the Jets. So even with the receiving depth now, can you see it emphasize those tight ends more, or do you think it'll still be more of the 3 receiver type offense that you saw he brought in when he was on assistant with McVay?
Yeah, no, I expect that they'll be heavy with the 2 tight ends. I think, they'll definitely switch and go to some 3 and 4 wide when it called upon. We saw some of the creativity with LaFleur too. Some of those trick plays that he'll draw out. Now, some of that was out of necessity towards the end of the season when, it was just Braxton Berrios is like the only thing that got going there. But you could see that he's willing and able to do that type of stuff. But this is going to be a meat and potatoes offense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to use those 2 tight ends. They're going to bring in heavy offensive lines, and they're going to use the running game to set up the passing attack. That's what it's going to be. They want to be in the same vein when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl that year and they were running for like 15 yards to carry. Yeah, we know what the NFL is these days. Everyone wants to pass, but if you can get a first down every time running the ball, go for it.
Talk about the Jets defense, and the Jets defense was one of the worst in the league last year. Robert Saleh was brought here to really change and transform this defense into that prototypical defense we saw Rex Ryan bring to the Jets in the mid 2000s. When you look at this team now, you added Carl Lawson last year. He tears his Achilles before the season started. Everybody said that this guy was going to be the it factor for the New York Jets. They didn't have any pass rush on the edge. Now you have Jermaine Johnson on one side, and now you have Carl Lawson on the other. You have a middle. Quentin Williams he's going to expect that $100 million contract. I expect him to take 2 or 3 steps forward this year. He had 6 sacks last year, 7 sacks the year before that. I like to see Quentin Williams have 12 or 13 this year and show people why he's the dominant force in the middle. And some of the other players that have Rankins really didn't show up last year. They gave Franklin Myers a lot of money. He didn't play well in the second half of the season, completely died down when he got that contract. And they brought in other players, obviously Sauce Gardner, that secondary. What are your thoughts to this defense this year moving forward? Is this team going to be a completely different defensive style of team, even with C.J. Mosley now at full strength?
Yeah, it's going to look a lot different. Last year's defense, first to talk about Carl Lawson, every single day of the training camp, he was just dominating, putting on the show. And then to watch him get hurt, it was just like deflating. Like even us reporters were just like, oh, there goes the defense. But get him back, what he can do. But it's still it's kind of tough because like on one hand, I'm cut Rob Saleh some slack because he was trying to run his defense, his system without the horses to run it. But at the same time, I was like, you got to recognize you don't have the horses to run it. So I know you want to implement your system, but you have to tweak it to what you're working with. And that's what you saw the first part of the season. He was just stubborn. They were stubbornly trying to just enforce their system, even though they knew they didn't have the guys. And they went into the season knowing, hey, we're going to be starting a bunch of undrafted free agents. And then those guys got hurt. And then like the secondary, they were picking up every week. They had a new safety playing. So there was a lot of moving parts. And if everything broke right for them last year, it was going to be a bad defense. And everything seemed to break as wrong as possible. So it went really bad. So I think it'll be, like a progression back to the mean here. And then if you can keep Carl Lawson healthy, you can get a little bit more out of the secondary. Now they still are missing, like a ball hawking free safety. They still need some linebacker help too. They're going to need to find another big body to plug for the run stuff and defense. So, but this team had so many holes, they weren't going to be able to fill them all. But I think that they're going to be able to be like at least, much more closer to a league average defense this year with a little bit more upside some weeks.
So a lot of rumors were swirling around the Jets trading for a receiver. That obviously did not happen. Deebo Samuel was the big one, but also DK Metcalf, AJ Brown before he got traded to the Eagles. Do you think the Jets made the right decision in not pursuing that at the price that those teams wanted to?
Yeah, at the price that the price and the tag I think works. Tyreek, obviously what they offered for Tyreek, I think would have worked. They weren't going to offer up, either of their first round picks and then to give him that money. Because, like I said before, that it's all the training wheels theory. But once you start investing all that money into the free agents, now you're fully pot committed, and it's like you're all out on these next couple years. If you can hold off on that, then you leave yourself flexibility. So then, if Zach Wilson doesn't pan out, then you could position yourself as, one of these teams, the new team of the Tampa Bay Bucks, who was stocked ready for Tom Brady, or the Broncos, who was stocked and looked like you made themselves a nice destination for Russell Wilson. So if Zach Wilson doesn't pan out, you can try to position yourself for something like that. And, obviously it'd be great to get an AJ Brown, and the way that, I would have preferred that at the time, but the way that they had gone through that, it made all the sense in the world to me. I get it.